If you want to clear your subconscious blocks, you need to know why they're there to begin with. We are biologically hardwired to move away from pain. It's an instinct that is crucial to our survival. If we touch a hot stove, you don't have to think first before jerking your hand back. It happens automatically. What happens though when we experience emotional pain? Same thing, sort of. You try to pull away, but you can't. Where can you go when the pain you're experiencing is coming from within? Since you can't run away from it, you try to block it. Your intention is positive, but doing this creates more problems than you're consciously aware of. Years after putting the emotional pain behind you, you find yourself blocked and you don't know why. I suffered from this myself, and I've helped many clients over the past decade overcome their subconscious blocks. By the end of this video, you'll know how to do it too, so you can create the changes in your life that you want. Most people think a block is a real thing sitting in their mind, obstructing your progress. But in Neuro Linguistic Programming, NLP, we know that the words we use are clues to how we perceive reality. Even though you know there is no actual thing or object in your brain blocking you, the word block makes you perceive it that way. You feel as if the obstruction in your way is actually real. The word block is a noun, a thing. But what's happening in your mind when you feel blocked is actually an activity, a process. When you shift your understanding this way, there's movement. You can work with it and change it. Also, the term mental block is actually a metaphor. As I already mentioned, there is no literal block in your mind. When a metaphor is overused, we tend to accept it as literal reality. Metaphors can be powerful when transferring a meaning from one context to another, but taken literally, metaphors can be destructive. Think about religious fundamentalists who take the Bible literally, for example. Nothing good comes from it. Many of the teachings are metaphorical and not meant to be taken literally. One more thing while we're on the topic of words. The word subconscious is misleading. It suggests this part of your mind is less than, but it's not. It runs your entire system, from your unconscious beliefs to beating your heart and blinking your eyes. I prefer the word unconscious because it reminds you that these are just two parts of the same mind, your conscious awareness and everything else within you that's happening outside of your conscious awareness. So instead of thinking you have a subconscious block, start thinking of it as unconscious blocking, an activity, not a thing. This will give you space to resolve the issue. Most blocks come from emotional pain. You can't run from something happening inside you. So the mind creates distance in the only way it knows how, by suppressing and shutting down. In other words, blocking. This is what is referred to in NLP as an away from strategy. Instead of moving toward what you want, you're focused on avoiding what you don't want. This strategy rarely works well because you're more focused on what you don't want rather than what you do want, which just creates more of what you don't want. It also creates anxiety. Maybe you failed before, maybe you felt shame. So now your system says, don't ever feel that again. But here's the problem. When you block the bad feelings, you also block the good ones. You lose access to a wealth of inner resources when you shut down the part of yourself that's hurting. There's a better way. Unless your parents were clever therapists or NLP teachers, you probably never learned a real process for dealing with emotional pain. You used whatever made sense to you in your developmental years to cope with it. As you grew up, you did your best to avoid it altogether, which meant missing out on opportunities like asking the girl you had a crush on to the school dance. Not wanting to feel the pain of rejection and disappointment became your default strategy. Now those avoidances are manifesting as unconscious blocks that hold you back from reaching your highest potential and living your greatest fulfillment. The good news is that you're not actually stuck. You can change this starting now by accepting emotional pain when it happens. Don't go digging into your past to find every painful experience that has ever happened to you so that you can accept it. You can do that for the rest of your life and still find a never-ending catalog of painful experiences to accept. Many people do this. In order to validate it, they call it healing. But in actuality, it's just more avoidance. They tell themselves that once they've healed all of their wounds, then they will go create the life they want. But that day never comes. Healing is necessary and real, but searching for wounds in order to heal is not true healing. In the pursuit of your higher potential and fulfillment, wounds will show up. When they do, that's when you heal them. Before I give you the process to dissolve unconscious blocks, I want to give you a common example of how a mental block is created. People seek self-improvement advice when they're stuck. It's probably why you clicked on this video. Unfortunately, there are way too many people offering bad advice that makes sense. If you haven't learned this lesson yet, now is the time. And that is that just because something makes sense doesn't make it true. Often, the truth is counterintuitive, which is why the saying goes, the truth will set you free, but it will kick your ass first. For several years of my life, I consistently fell short of succeeding at and achieving my goals to the point that it felt like there was no other explanation than I was purposefully sabotaging myself. Once again, this was another misconception that was creating a block in my mind. Because I was frustrated and confused, I looked for any solution that made sense. That's when I stumbled across the worst self-improvement advice I have ever gotten. Come to think of it, it isn't even advice. It's pseudo-wisdom. I was told that I was suffering from a fear of success, and that it's much worse than a fear of failure. The only problem is that fear of failure is real. Fear of success is bullshit. You do not fear success. You might fear change, you may fear the unknown, but you are not afraid of fulfilling your success. You are naturally wired to fulfill your values. You value success, therefore you're motivated to succeed. Succeeding doesn't scare you. When you're confused and frustrated, you're vulnerable to bad advice. Some guru online says that you're afraid of success, and that makes sense to you because nothing else does. But because fear of success isn't real, there is no real solution. So you end up chasing a fix for a problem that doesn't exist. Now you have a mental block. Carry this around for long enough, and it will become an unconscious block. It's even more powerful when it's unconscious, because you can't choose to change something that you're not consciously aware of. It ends up blocking your potential, and you have no idea what the cause is. That's how people get stuck. So how do you get unstuck? Start with stopping. Stop running from emotional pain. Emotional pain is scary when you don't have a way to resolve it. You don't need to fear emotional pain anymore because I'm going to show you how to deal with it. When you accept your emotional pain rather than trying to avoid it, ask yourself this simple question. What would I rather feel instead? That question alone begins to shift you toward what you want rather than trying to avoid what you don't want. Now you're focusing on a bigger picture, bigger than just the pain. There's movement and space, something more than just pain. Here's the next understanding. Every action you take is an attempt to fulfill a value, something that is important to you, even when you're not conscious of the value you're attempting to fulfill. The problem is most people don't know what their values are. You chase goals without understanding how achieving them will or won't fulfill you. This lack of consciously knowing what you're trying to fulfill will feel like a block. Your conscious and unconscious are not working together, which makes you susceptible to internal conflicts. You're working against yourself rather than aligning with yourself. Step one is to get clear on your values. Your values drive every decision and every behavior. Without knowing them, you can waste years chasing goals that never give you what you truly want. Later in this video, I will give you a simple values elicitation tool you can use anytime you're making a big decision or setting a meaningful goal. When you know your values, you will stop chasing the wrong goals. You stop feeling confused about what you should want. You start moving toward goals that actually fulfill you. Step two is working with your resistance instead of fighting it. Whenever you try something new, resistance shows up. That resistance is trying to protect you from emotional pain. Behind every resistance is a positive intention, a value trying to be fulfilled. But resistance uses an away from strategy. It tries to protect you by pulling you back instead of helping you move forward. Don't fear it. Welcome it. Ask it what it's trying to do for you. Beneath that resistance is a value, a deeper purpose. And once you uncover that deeper purpose, you can integrate it back into your bigger goal. Step three is combining NLP tools to resolve emotional pain so that unconscious blocks aren't created in the first place. And the blocks you have now dissolve. Two of the most powerful tools for this are values elicitation to understand how to align with what fulfills you, and parts integration to resolve inner conflict and resistance so you stop blocking yourself. You can get access to free PDFs that guide you step by step through these processes in the description of this video. These processes will help you dissolve inner resistance, reconnect with internal resources so you feel whole, move you toward what you want with clarity and confidence, And best of all is you'll stop repeating painful patterns. When you use these tools, emotional pain stops being scary. It becomes information. And information is something you can work with. You don't have to block anything anymore. You're no longer afraid. Your unconscious is your biggest ally when you know how to communicate with it. If you want to see how all of this works in real life, watch this next video where I do a live parts integration demo with a client. Seeing it in action will help everything click.